It is a big time in the fantasy football world. It is semifinal weekend. We already had a wild game on Thursday. So, if you're either feeling good coming out of that one or feeling like you need some help, we're here for you. Let's break down each game of the fantasy football week as we head toward the championship, hopefully. All right, we're going to go game by game, breaking it all down. And of course, if you have any specific questions, I like to think that I can cover a lot of ground, but I don't know what your team's doing. So let me know in the chats, or if you're watching after the fact, hit me up in the comments, or on social media. I am at Primetime Klein, and we can discuss all things fantasy football there. Let's get into it. On Saturday, coming off of, again, a crazy game on Thursday between the Rams and the Seahawks. We are now getting into the Saturday slate, and we'll begin with Philadelphia taking on the Washington Commanders. Washington obviously dealing with some injury issues and all of that. The Eagles just dealing with being an inconsistent football team at this particular time. Let's take a look at a few of the stats to kind of figure out where we want to get to. For the Eagles, while the offense has been struggling, the defense has still been the defense, right? They have allowed the 8th fewest points to quarterbacks this season, the 7th fewest points allowed to wide receivers, and the 3rd fewest allowed to tight ends. With Marcus Mariota as the quarterback this week for Washington, I don't know how much you can trust with Rodriguez. We kind of talked about him. We weren't able to play it. We weren't able to stream it anyway, but it's up right now. The waiver wire rebound. I just feel like that kind of volume is going to be tough to ignore. So I think Rodriguez is still probably someone we're going to have to play. Again, if you have a specific question about that, let me know in the chat, and we can certainly kind of dig through that one together, or in the comments again after the fact. I would be starting him. Everything else is very much case-by-case basis. Guys like McLaurin and all of that to kind of see where they're all sitting. But this would probably be a week where I feel like we are avoiding our Washington Commanders. On the Philadelphia side, when they have the football, again, it has been a difficult offense to trust this season, but this is a difficult matchup to stay away from. Washington last season was one of the surprises of the football world with what they were able to do on the defensive side of the ball. This year, they're surprising nobody. They've allowed the 6th most points to quarterback, 9th most to wide receivers, 6th most to running backs, and 4th most to tight ends. And because of this, I'm not usually a hot take guy. In part because I don't really know what accounts as a hot take and what doesn't. But I would assume this one maybe gets into that category. My start of the week at quarterback is Jalen Hurts. I think this is a great matchup. I feel like they have an opportunity here to really make a bit of a statement. And we've said that about Philadelphia before. I understand that. And it has been quite a bit ugly this year. But this is it's such a great matchup for them on Saturday afternoon. So I feel like we're starting our Eagles this week, right? We're starting Jalen Hurts. We're starting Saquon Barkley. We're starting Brown and Smith. And we're starting Goddard out at tight end. And Eagles defense is a play as well. This is a group we're rolling with. This is a group we are feeling very, very comfortable about at this particular time. Back in the YouTube chat, we have a question here from AS-ET7YJ. Starting Devontae or Goddard in the flex this week? Ooh, that is a really good question. Because I was saying we start our Eagles. So I don't know what you're rocking with at tight end. That is making Goddard be a flex option. But I mean, God, they're bad against both. I would go with Goddard. Smith has been kind of a big play thing, and that has helped out, obviously. But I think Goddard is going to get a little bit more reliable target volume in this game and be a little bit more consistent there. So Goddard would be my call over Devonta Smith this week. But I will say, AS dash all of those things. If you played like Puka last week, if you're like me in the consolation of the Vampire League and we're down by 50 going into Sunday or Saturday, I guess in this case, and you need that big play potential, Devontae would be the one for me. Like if we're either this you don't love the projections, but if we're projected to lose by a lot, or we faced a big performance from Thursday, Devontae is a good play to kind of get that back. But if we just need to keep it between the white lines, just put the ball in play, overall Goddard is the play for me there. But a desperation swing to Devontae isn't bad either. Up next on Saturday, a massive game in the NFC North with the Green Bay Packers taking on the Chicago Bears. Green Bay, their defense this year has been solid. It is obviously shorthanded now with Micah Parsons going down with the injury and just being a bit of a banged up unit, but still a pretty good defense to trot out there. That being said, Caleb Williams is starting to play better, and he is starting to kind of get a grasp of this offense. So I think you can feel comfortable in playing him this week. Swift, there's some injury issues there. Monangai may have a pretty good volume load, but again, Green Bay, 8th fewest points allowed to running backs. It's a very weird thing to say, but I kind of feel like Caleb Williams is the only one that you feel great about starting from a team. And it's strange to say that about a quarterback, that you don't trust any of the weapons, but you think Caleb will have a pretty good game. But I do think that. And with injuries, Luther Burden and Roma Dunze, not necessarily available for this one, so DJ Moore could have a pretty good volume day, so he is probably someone that you'd feel all right trusting as well. When Green Bay has the football, the Bears defense has, I feel like they are better in theory than they are on paper, but they have given up 9th most points to quarterbacks, and with that, the 6th most points to wide receivers. Obviously, the injury to Christian Watson kind of muddies the waters a little bit, but we can trust Jordan Love in this matchup. Watch for the Josh Jacobs situation. He played banged up last week and did very well with it. But it's another week, and it's a shorter week now, going up against this Bears defense. What is he going to do? If he is active, you are playing him. And if he's not active, you're playing Emmanuel Wilson. And hopefully, if you're the Josh Jacobs owner, it's a nice, easy 1-to-1. And you can just kind of roll with it that way. I think you can feel very comfortable about starting those guys. Where it gets uncomfy is in the wide receiver room. And Christian Watson coming in, I think really did kind of solidify things for this unit. But with him out, there isn't really that number one guy there in Green Bay. It is very difficult to trust, and it is very difficult for me to put this out there when you have a spot in the final on the line. I kind of think you can trust Matthew Golden. I feel like he is one of those guys that it was a bit of a shaky start, but the numbers won't show it, but I do think when you watch him play, he is more comfortable out there on the field now. And he is a little bit more up to speed with what is needed at the NFL level. And you hear it all the time. At this point in the year, these ain't rookies anymore. So I kind of feel like you can trust Matthew Golden. This might be a situation where if you faced, say, Puka Nacua on Thursday or Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you kind of just need that big boom play, I feel like Matthew Golden might be that big boom that you need to look for coming up on Saturday evening. So I feel like you can roll with him as well. But again, let me know what situation you are in, and we can kind of figure it out that way. And wide receiver 2 and flex with Watson, DK, Michael Wilson, Sutton, Pittman, and Evans. So we need to pick 2 of these. I'm assuming that Watson is Christian Watson. Is he playing? I was under the impression that he was hurt, but just want to see if I have missed something here. Just give me one sec while we pull it up. Let's see, where are we? Injury report. Packers. Big letters. Week 16 versus the Bears. Pretty good matchup. Let's just get to who practiced and who didn't. I don't need a big blurb here. Come on. DNP, limited. He is questionable for the game. So, looking at that list there, I don't think we have any decisions we need to make on Saturday. Watson is the decision to make on Saturday. So at least you'll know. If Watson's playing, that's a boost and a pretty good matchup. So, I would pencil Watson in right now and go Watson and DK against against Detroit. But if Watson is out, then honestly, I kind of rank them in the order you put them in. I would probably put I'd flip Evans and Pittman, but I would go Watson and Metcalf, and then if Watson can't go on Saturday, then Wilson would be the play over him. So yes, I would rank those right now for your wide receiver and flex epic. I would go Watson, Metcalf, Wilson, Sutton, Evans, Pittman. That's the order that I would go for those ones. So hopefully that helps you out for a big one here in the fantasy semifinals. Again, that one coming from the YouTube chat. Let's go forward now as the Buffalo Bills take on the Cleveland Browns. Toxic in the Twitch chat is hoping that it is a very quiet day for the Bills as Toxic faces wife in the Vampire League semifinal. And she's rocking with the Josh Allen, James Cook, I was going to say stack. I don't know if that's necessarily a stack, but when Buffalo scores a touchdown, odds are she's been involved in that in some way. It's just they're going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Cleveland, fourth fewest points allowed to quarterbacks this season and ninth fewest allowed to wide receivers. You start your studs in these matchups. There is not a chance that you can feel confident rolling with the quarterback here at this particular time. I don't think you can do that. I don't feel like there's a chance that you can sit the quarterback. Sorry, apologies. You have to start Josh Allen. There is no way you get to the semifinals, and unless we're in a guillotine league, you get to the semifinals and like, you know what? Yeah, Josh Allen's not the play this week. You have to roll with Superman when he is out there. And James Cook, same situation. No one else, though. I'm not trusting the pass catchers. I don't even know if I'm trusting the tight ends. I know that they have been active in the offense, and Dawson Knox was one of the dumpster darlings last week, but I feel like you can find better options out there. On the Cleveland side, we talked about Shedeur in the waiver wire rebound. This would not be a play for him this week, I don't believe. Buffalo allowing the fourth fewest points to quarterbacks. Sixth fewest points to quarterbacks, fourth fewest allowed to running backs, and the fewest to tight ends. So I don't know if we're starting any Browns. We don't really know what the situation is at running back, who's going to get the volume there. Judkins has been good. Sampson has been working his way into the offense as well. Again, a very good defense. Fourth most points allowed to running backs. Apologies. I'm screwing this one up all over the place. This is... Again, I feel like it's a good defense, and I feel like even with that fourth most points allowed to running back, like you can run on Buffalo. I don't know why I thought fewest there before. It is just the volume is a little bit complicated out there. Judkins is probably a play, but with Sampson taking a little bit more of the load, it does get a little concerning. And in deeper leagues, Sampson could be a play also, but that is it for the Browns that we are trusting there. Up next, it is the LA Chargers against the Dallas Cowboys in what is, to me, probably the most intriguing game on the fantasy football slate here this week, because you have a Dallas defense that has been a gold mine for fantasy points lately, right? Most points allowed to quarterbacks, most points allowed to running back or wide receivers, and seventh most points to the running back. But you have a Chargers team that has had troubles on the offensive line, and Herbert is obviously a little limited, even with it being a non-throwing hand injury, still a little bit limited there as well. So how much are you really trusting in this situation? And then on the other side, you have a Cowboys offense that has, again, been a gold mine for fantasy points this year, but this is a really good LA Chargers defense, and the offense is starting to fall off a little bit. Pickens is turning into a pumpkin again. So how much can you trust on either side when generally a Dallas matchup is everybody eats? So I find this one really, really intriguing. Before we get into the breakdown, again, Toxic in the chat over on YouTube now. Was there a problem on Twitch? Not complaining. Happy to have you anywhere. Just let me know if there was something that necessitated that move. I'd appreciate that. But for Dallas, when they have the ball, the Chargers have given up the second fewest points to quarterbacks this season. And this is a situation I'm in a league that I co-own with my brother-in-law. And as of this moment, we're going Herbert over Dak Prescott. We picked up Herbert on our bye week last week after we finished with the top record in the league, or one of the top. And just in case type of a thing. But now, kind of looking at it, I feel pretty comfortable with that move. Dallas defense, again, not awesome. And Herbert, I still think, is good enough to take advantage of that situation. And on the other side of it, it's probably difficult because you are likely in this spot in no small part because Dak Prescott has balled out this season. But Dak's my sit of the week. This is an offense that is starting to become a little less effective with Pickens kind of reverting to some old ways and everything like that. We have a just subscribed. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Deeds. Yes, 22 times now. Yeah, the Booker T thing, but we'd have to do this for an hour for that. So thank you, Deeds, for the subscription on Twitch. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes, hello to you. But again, I just feel like with Pickens, he is kind of turning back into what I thought he was going to be when I was talking about how overrated Dallas was coming into the season. And to his credit, I have been wrong more than I have been right on this Cowboys team this year, but I feel like it's starting to fall off, and this Chargers defense is really good and have really been stepping up as the weeks go on. So I feel like Dak is a sit at this time. Fewest points allowed to wide receivers. I would try to find a better option than Pickens out there this week. Williams has been, the volume has been steady, and so I think you can kind of roll with him there. But I would have a bit of a concern anyway with that one. So that's it's not great for a Dallas offense that has probably got a lot of people to keep playing this time of year. On the Chargers side, like I said, I'm starting Herbert over Dak Prescott this week in a league that I am in. I just feel like this offense is going to be able to eat a little bit. And I feel like this is a start your Chargers. Keenan Allen, kind of the same thing. Ladd McConkey, all these guys. Hampton, all of them, we're trusting. This is a Dallas defense has got better after the moves they made at the trade deadline, but still one that you can take advantage of. So yeah, we're liking it. We're liking it a lot. A good matchup here this week. Okay, let's go now. Jets against the Saints. I did, again, the waiver wire rebound. We talked about how it doesn't feel great, but Tyler Shuck's a pretty good option this week against a Jets defense that's allowed the 10th most points to quarterbacks this season. Shuck is looking more confident as an NFL starter at the quarterback spot and has got this offense, I think, in a position where they can at least take advantage of bad matchups like the one they have against the Jets team that just had to fire their defensive coordinator for how bad he was at coordinating the defense. So I think Shuck's a play here. I'm not to a point where, like we talked about the last matchup, Herbert versus Dak. We're not starting Shuck over Dak. That we're not at that point, but if we missed out on someone on the waiver wire after Mahomes' injury or something like that, Shuck is a perfectly viable option at quarterback. A lot of people are pointing to a couple of different situations in the New Orleans backfield because Neal is now going to be out as well as Alvin Kamara. But I think we have seen a couple of times this season that guessing along with that backfield can be a bit of a fool's errand. So I would avoid it if you can. There are some situations where you can't, and I understand it, and you kind of just got to roll with it. But I would have some great concern about rolling with that. So I would try to avoid it. So again, it's that weird situation where we trust the quarterback and basically no one else. Juwan Johnson, I think, could have a fine week this week at tight end. On the Jets side, I don't know who we're trusting really at this point. We talked about Adonai Mitchell being an option in the waiver wire rebound. Deeper leagues, I think it can. And I think there is a real opportunity for him again, even with Cook potentially being the starter at quarterback. New Orleans' defense is better than people thought. It's still not great. So I think there are a few chances here for them to kind of step up, or for Adonai Mitchell, to kind of step up. And I think, again, if you are someone who had a bit of a rough Thursday, there's an opportunity to kind of take that big swing with Adonai Mitchell and try to get some of those points back. So that would be kind of the only Jet that I am trusting right now. Burning it up 86 had to come here. Twitch mobile was being twitchy. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Apologies that we're having some issues over there. So hopefully everything is fine on the YouTube end. But yeah, it's been a bit of a technical nightmare the last couple of days around here. So going to spend the holiday season trying to fix that and maybe make some some changes to some of the stuff that we use here with Couch Potato Diary. Again, I say wait, it's me. I'm the only one in here talking. But either way, I appreciate you popping over on the YouTube side to come say hi. I really do appreciate that from all of you guys. Yes, hello Deeds, who I met in person. I don't know if we've talked about this on the stream yet, but had a Deeds sighting at one of the live events that we did for Sportsnet 960. So really, really cool to get that out in the wild. Let's move to now a matchup that I don't think anyone at the start of the season thought was going to be an intriguing one, or one that we would spend more than 5 seconds on in a fantasy football discussion. But it is the battle for the NFC South, with Tampa Bay taking on Carolina. When the Panthers have the football, the Buccaneers defense is kind of wearing out a little bit. Third most points allowed to quarterbacks this season, fifth most points allowed to the tight end. So again, we talked about it in the waiver wire rebound. Bryce Young's an option this week. I am, again, maybe not saying that he crosses the Dak threshold where we're starting him over him in a tough matchup against the Chargers. But again, if we missed out on Mahomes, or if we had a Mahomes injury, survived to the semifinals, Bryce Young is someone that we can kind of bank on and give us an opportunity to win in our fantasy matchups. At running back, Chuba Hubbard, I thought that he would kind of win that starting job back. That hasn't really been the case. I don't think you can trust him here against what is still, it's a neutral matchup for fantasy, but it's still a pretty good run defense for Tampa Bay. Rico Dowdle, I think, is going to get enough volume that he can kind of be the play there. So I think he can be pretty okay as a fantasy option this week. And Tedero McMillan, I'm fine trusting him as a bit of a roller coaster season winds down. When Tampa Bay has the ball, Carolina has actually been tough against quarterbacks this year, 9th fewest points to QBs and 10th fewest allowed to wide receivers. I think there's obviously some kind of an issue with Baker. And so, I mean, the good news is if you had Baker, you probably aren't burdened by this decision because you've been eliminated by now. But I don't think Baker may. It's crazy that Bryce Young is the quarterback that we can trust in the fantasy playoffs over Baker Mayfield. But I think that's just where we are at this particular time. Bucky Irving is certainly someone you can trust against Carolina. You can run the ball against these guys. I think we're at a point. Igbuka is not a receiver that we can roll with. But Mike Evans, if he's starting, I think you have to kind of roll with that one. Just name value, star power alone for you there for Tampa Bay. But a very interesting one, that is for sure, with that matchup. Up next, it is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Giants. The Vikings have given up the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks this season, the 2nd fewest points allowed to wide receivers. I don't think I'm touching this one from a New York Giants standpoint, regardless of how fun some of the guys on that team may be, and the nice boost that we were able to get from a Singletary a time ago, or Tyrone Tracy last week. Maybe Tracy just based on the volume, but I'm not doing it with my chance of the fantasy playoffs on the line, or fantasy final on the line. I don't think I'm rolling with anyone with an NYG by their name unless I have to. This is where it gets a little bit stressful because, again, it's kind of like the Baker Mayfield one. If you have Justin Jefferson, there's a chance you don't have to make a decision about it because your team's been eliminated, like mine. But the Giants have allowed the 3rd most points to wide receivers this season. I don't think they have anyone in that secondary that can cover Justin Jefferson. And so J.J. McCarthy, we're hitting dance moves into the end zone and stuff like that. Maybe it's feeling a little bit comfortable. I get that there was it wasn't a great week for Jefferson last week against Dallas. Naylor was able to kind of eat. Justin Jefferson's my start of the week. I can't not trust him in a matchup against the New York Giants with the season on the line. So I have to roll with the guy who I took number 1. Again, there's a pretty good chance you may not have to, but he and Aaron Jones, both my starts of the week. 3rd most points allowed to wide receivers, 3rd most points allowed to running backs for the New York Giants. So we're rolling with that. Hawkinson, you might be able to find a better option there. They've actually been weirdly good against tight ends this season. Firebros 2675 is back in the chat. If you were to sit 2, which 2 would you sit? AJ Brown, Nico Collins, Tedero McMillan, Mike Evans, and Wandale. Happy holidays. Happy holidays to you, Firebros. All right, we're sitting two. We're sitting Wandale. I just said I'm not trusting anyone against Minnesota here this week. So Wandale Robinson is a no-go for me. AJ Brown, it's a great matchup against Washington. We're not sitting him. Nico Collins, it's a great matchup against the Raiders. He could get 100, so no. So now we're down to Tedero McMillan and Mike Evans. Oh, from the same game. Holy crap. I feel like it's Evans that we're sitting there. That's crazy to me that I'm saying that. But yeah, Carolina's been a bit tougher on wide receivers than Tampa Bay has been. And I think there is some kind of an injury thing happening with Baker Mayfield. So it feels bad. It feels gross to say that out of my mouth, but I think we're sitting Mike Evans and Wandale Robinson in that spot. Wandale feels very good. But yeah, I think we're sitting Mike Evans in that spot. That's crazy to me to say that. But I think that's what we're doing this week, Fire Bros. And hopefully that can get you into the fantasy finals there. Up next, it is Kansas City against Tennessee. Boy, this matchup has a bit of a different tone to it now after Kansas City was mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. Oh, on that last one, we're not sitting Michael Wilson. I get that maybe Arizona's offense is getting a little bit healthier, and maybe that pushes him back a little bit, but Wilson's been really good in fantasy. Atlanta, it's a relatively okay defense. They've actually given up quite a bit of points to wide receivers, so we're not sitting Michael Wilson in that spot either. Man, maybe I said before we're starting Mike Evans based on name value. Maybe we're not, because seems like we're putting him pretty far down now. But yeah, we're not sitting Michael Wilson this week there either. So those, again, it stays Wandale Robinson and Mike Evans in that spot. Fire Bros. All right, like I said, Kansas City taking on the Tennessee Titans. I'm not sure what we're trusting in this. It's a great matchup for the Chiefs offense, but it's Gardner Minshew who is at the helm. So obviously we're not starting him. At running back, Pacheco just has not taken advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to him. So I would have a difficult time rolling with him, even in a good matchup. Kareem Hunt, if you're comfortable having him on your team, it's a start probably this week. With Gardner throwing the ball, I'm worried a little bit about the fantasy value of the pass catchers. And Rice got dinged up in that last game, so we'll check on his health. If he's healthy, you probably have to play him against Tennessee. Like that might be a bridge too far. But like to Fire Bros question from earlier, I would start him. I would start Rice over Mike Evans this week if he is healthy. But that's probably the only pass catching option there, the wide receiving option, I guess. And then Kelsey kind of just have to at this time. And then on the Titans, Kansas City's defense is too good. We're not starting anyone on Tennessee against Kansas City here. So that one is a hard pass for me there. Nice and easy one there. Up next, a couple quarterbacks in the news as Cincinnati takes on the Miami Dolphins. Cincinnati has been a goldmine for fantasy players this year, but it's Quinn Ewers getting the start at quarterback. That'd be bold if you had to roll with Quinn Ewers as your fantasy quarterback here this week. We're obviously not doing that. On the Miami side, like Waddle is still good enough that you kind of have to. HN is still good enough you kind of have to. Waller is actually my start of the week at tight end. It's maybe an overblown theory at this point, but generally, young rookie quarterbacks really like that safety blanket of the tight end. Also, the Bengals, aside from last week, some crazy how, are genuinely atrocious at covering tight ends, to the point if you wonder if they know that tight ends exist in the sport. 3 different tight ends got touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills in that wild game a couple of weeks ago. So Darren Waller with a young quarterback who's going to be looking for some of those quick reads over the middle, that feels like a pretty good day there. Again, watch the injury report because he has had some concerns on the injury side of things as the weeks have kind of, or as the week has kind of gone along. Sorry. On the Cincinnati side, Miami's defense has allowed the 8th fewest points to wide receivers and the 3rd most points to tight ends. Joe Burrow did a thing on the taped couch potato that we had to do about him looking for a trade. So there's some weird things going on there. We're starting Joe Burrow. If we made it here with Joe Burrow, we're starting Joe Burrow against Miami. And I get 8th fewest points to wide receivers. If we made it here with Chase, we're not sitting him either. And if Higgins is healthy, we probably have to play him in that matchup. And same goes for Chase Brown. So we're starting our Bengals in this matchup here with Miami, but a very noteworthy one. And maybe we'll get into some of the storylines there when we do our actual pick-by-pick breakdown for each game here in a little bit on the stream. Don't at me, bro, on YouTube. Do I risk and wait for T. Higgins? Other options are Devontae Smith and DJ Moore in a PPR league. Again, that's a very tricky one because Cincinnati going up against Miami, I still feel good about that and about Higgins, but again, there is the injury concern. Miami is still decent against wide receivers, not to the point where if Higgins was healthy, I would still bench him, but I do like your opportunity here to go with Devontae or with DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is going to have a lot of, again, predictable volume against a Green Bay defense that's a little bit banged up now, so I wouldn't risk it. I would go with DJ Moore in that spot over T. Higgins. So yeah, more. Honestly, I would probably go Devontae Smith too over Higgins. That's how I feel with that. Yes, yeah. Higgins on Sunday, the others on Saturday. I understand where the issue is coming from there. Yes, no. Sorry if I didn't make that clear before. So yeah, I can see where the concern is. I would rank that Moore, Smith, and Higgins, given the situation we are in. If everyone was playing at the same time on Sunday, and Higgins was healthy, Higgins would be the play. But because of the spot that you are in, and we just can't risk that, and like looking at what would be after, because they are one of the early games, right? It's not a yeah, okay. So that is 1 o'clock slate for the Eastern folks. For us here in the Mountain Time Zone, it's 11 a.m. By the way, best time zone to watch football in is the Mountain Time Zone, but that's neither here nor there. If they were all in the early games, then it would be Higgins. Looking at what could be available waiver wire wise behind it, there just isn't that play that I think you would feel great about. So yeah, I think you have to be safe in this spot and go with DJ Moore. And yeah, I would rank it Moore, Smith, and Higgins there. Jacksonville taking on the Denver Broncos. This is a prove-it game to me for Jacksonville, and one that I'm not necessarily trusting them in. But we'll start with Denver. When they have the football, this Jags defense has been good. Second fewest points allowed to running backs this season, and the 8th most points allowed to tight ends. So that has been a bit of an issue, but the running back thing is legit. And because of that, RJ Harvey is my sit of the week. I don't trust him anyway. I get that he has been putting up some numbers lately. A couple of them have been helped by touchdowns, but touchdowns happen. But this Jacksonville run defense is for real. So I would have a tough time in trusting RJ Harvey this week. So he is my stay away, my sit of the week. Obviously, matchup pending and what is on your roster, but that is just one of the ones that I am just nope. Don't want much part of that one there. Bo Nix, again, I would have a difficult time starting him. I understand he had a very good week last week, but again, Jacksonville's defense just concerns me enough to kind of stay away from that one. On the Jacksonville side, when they have the ball, speaking of legit defenses, that's what this Denver one is. And I kind of don't want a whole lot to do with Jacksonville this week. Lawrence is a no-go, absolutely. ETN, we kind of have to roll with him, probably at this point, especially now with Tootin going down with an injury. There's going to be more volume for ETN to have. So he may not have an explosive day, but he might just get the ball enough that it's going to guide him down that path. But my sit of the week at wide receiver is Jacoby Meyers. I think that he is going to see a lot of Patrick Surtain, and that generally does not lead to a lot of fantasy goodness there. I know he has had a breakout campaign with Jacksonville, and a lot of you probably have to start him anyway, but Jacoby Meyers would be my sit of the week. I don't think I'm trusting a lot in... This is going to be a great football game, but I'm not loving a whole lot of what is happening there on the offensive side for either team in that matchup. Atlanta taking on Arizona. Arizona's offense has just been steady with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. We talked about Michael Wilson earlier with Fire Bros. I like him this week against an Atlanta defense that has allowed the eighth most points to wide receivers. The running back room is very crowded and confusing there. So if you have one of them and they're playing, I think you kind of have to trust it. If I say that, but then there's probably some pretty good options out there to start over those guys. So it's a case by case basis, but I would feel okay about it. And Brissett, I think you can roll with him as the quarterback here against Atlanta, which is weird because I also said that I think you can feel okay about Atlanta as a streaming defense this week against Arizona. They've been steady, but it's not to the point where I think it will kill you. And there's just not a lot of great streaming options out there on the defensive side here as we head into the semifinals and the finals, where a lot of teams I think have kind of stocked up on the defenses that they want and the ones that would be advantageous here in the final weeks of the fantasy season. On the Atlanta side, Drake London is obviously the big concern. He has been banged up the last couple of weeks. It sounds like he could go and maybe on a pitch clock. If Drake London is active, I would have a very difficult time keeping him on my bench with the understanding that there maybe is a pitch clock on this guy. But he is so talented. And when you see what Kyle Pitts was able to do last Thursday, you want some of that, right? So Drake London, I think, has to be a part of what you are doing if you have him in your roster, and he is on that active list for Sunday. Kirk Cousins, obviously a no-go. Bijan Robinson is obviously a yes. Arizona, the seventh most points allowed to tight ends. And if you're in this spot and you have Kyle Pitts, you're probably here because you have Kyle Pitts. I think you got to start him again in this one this week. Moving on, Raiders taking on the Houston Texans. When Houston has the ball, this is an easy one. Start him. Woody Marks, it's sounding a little iffy about whether he will play or not this week. Nick Chubb could be checking back into the lineup. He's a go, absolutely. If he is in, everyone who thought they were maybe a little bit smarter than everyone, crazy like a fox with Jawar Jordan, I would have a tough time trusting that, even in what is going to be a very good matchup here for the Texans. CJ Stroud is a player that I think we can absolutely trust against a Raiders defense that is just getting picked apart now at this point in the season. So again, Chubb, if Woody Marks is going, then he's a go. If he's not, Nick Chubb is probably a go. And honestly, he might be a go anyway, just because we saw when those two guys were healthy, Chubb actually got a little bit more of the volume there, if I remember right anyway. So I think both running backs could start or could be startable, for Houston. We're starting our Texans. We had Higgins in the waiver wire rebound. These are all guys that you roll with here. If they have HOU by their name, we're probably trusting them. And for the Raiders, this Texans defense is maybe the best in football. Fewest points allowed to quarterbacks, third fewest to wide receivers, ninth fewest to running backs, and eighth fewest to tight ends. I would have a hard time believing you have a better tight end option than Brock Bowers on your bench. And I also... The Genty conversation is a tough one. I would probably sit him this week. I think this is going to be another very bad week for the Raiders, and I think you could come up with two running back options on your team that are better and a flex option that's better than Ashton Genty this week for the Raiders. Fantasy question in the YouTube chat. We have Epic Ape Fight. PPR quarterback with Burrows, Shug, and Stroud. Ooh, that is a good one. Shug is out. I understand his inclusion, but to me, it's Stroud. That Raiders defense is atrocious. You do have to worry about Max Crosby coming in and wrecking shop. I feel like talent-wise, CJ Stroud is a lot better than what a lot of the numbers have suggested. And when you get a matchup like the one they have with the Raiders, he can really just ball it. Miami's defense is a little on the underrated side against Cincinnati here. So... Burrow, it's been weird the last week or so. You could see a big blow-up game and he just comes out yeah, we're doing it here. But I would have some concerns about that and just about where his mental state is. Shug, it's just, I can't put him ahead of these two guys. And I think Stroud is talented enough to take advantage of the Raider matchup. So give me CJ Stroud against Vegas in that one there, Epic Ape Fight. Pittsburgh taking on Detroit. Fascinating matchup to me, both from a football standpoint and a fantasy standpoint. For the Steelers, the eighth most points allowed to quarterbacks this season. They've allowed, though, the 10th fewest to running backs and the second most to tight ends. This is not a defense you stay away from anymore. It isn't at this point in the season. So for Detroit, I think we can trust Goff this week. The two wide receivers gonna play, Amon-Ra and Williams. At running back, Gibbs, Montgomery, like, if they're healthy and they play for Detroit, it's a go this week. We saw against a very good Rams defense last week how much this offense kind of put together. So they can do that again against a pretty bad Steelers defense. When Pittsburgh has the ball, Detroit's allowed the fifth most points to quarterbacks this season, second most to wide receivers, and third fewest to running backs. Aaron Rodgers, it's not a great hang, but I think you can trust him. Again, we're not putting Rodgers over Dak Prescott, but there are probably some options where Rodgers is the better one for, so I think you can feel okay about putting him in your lineup this week. DK Metcalf, I don't think Detroit has the secondary to hang with DK, so I think he has a pretty good game. Warren, Gainwell, PPR has been pretty good. The percentage of targets on routes run, he is one of the best. He just isn't out there all the time. But if we're desperate, he can go. And Jalen Warren, again, one where I think you could find a better option than him. But if you have to start him, I don't think you have to be too concerned about it. But I would maybe try to find some better options out there, is all I'm saying. And then we get into our primetime matchups of the week, which is a reminder that you can follow me on social media. I am at PrimetimeKlein on Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the places of social media. I think I am there at Primetime Klein. Sunday Night Football is the Patriots taking on the Ravens. Another must-win for the Baltimore Ravens against a Patriots team that had a bit of a rough one last week against Buffalo. When the Ravens have the football, the Patriots are the fourth fewest, have given up the fourth fewest points to running backs this season and the ninth most to tight ends. Now, be tough to trust the tight ends after what we saw a week ago with Andrews and Likely each struggling. I would have a tough time trusting them again this week, especially Likely, but it would be a little bit difficult to trust either of those guys. Lamar, we have to play him. You're not sitting him at this point. Same thing goes with Derrick Henry, but there isn't a whole lot else there that I love from a fantasy perspective here for the Baltimore Ravens in the fantasy semifinals. When the Patriots have the ball, the Ravens have given up the sixth fewest points to tight ends. It hasn't been a banner year for Baltimore defensively. They have got better as the weeks have gone on, as they've got healthier. Surprise, surprise there. But Drake May, probably a start this week. I think we kind of got to roll with that one there. Henderson breaks off the big play, and you saw what he could do last week. I think you kind of got to roll with him as well. But my sit of the week at tight end is Hunter Henry. I can't trust Hunter Henry in this spot. I know a few teams have really kind of funneled everything from New England toward the tight end. I just feel like Baltimore, the way they cover tight ends, like this is them allowing the sixth fewest points to tight ends. Sometimes it's a little fluky. Sometimes it's a game plan thing. I think because of the athleticism that they have at safety and at linebacker, it's a real thing to keep the ball away from the tight end. So Hunter Henry is not a go for me in this matchup. We move to Monday Night Football as the San Francisco 49ers take on Phillip Rivers and the Indianapolis Colts. When San Fran has the ball, the Colts have allowed the fourth most points to wide receiver and the 10th most points to tight ends. The one thing that would concern me about playing San Francisco is that the Colts kind of just dribbled the air out of the ball when they had it on offense. Like they really limited the amount of possessions that game had against Seattle, which is one of the reasons why the offensive numbers didn't look that great. And this is still, like, they've given up points to, like I said, to wide receivers and tight ends this year. It's a good defense. It's not a great one, but it's not all right, we're starting everybody against these guys. But we're starting our studs. Like, we're not, oh my God, they're playing Indianapolis. Well, I can't start Christian McCaffrey indoors. No. CMC's going to run. Kittle's going to have a pretty good game, I think. Brock Purdy, I think you can kind of roll with him as well. On the Colts side, it's just tough to trust. Obviously, we're not starting Phillip Rivers in the fantasy semifinals. That should go without saying, but I said it, so we're fine. And I have a tough time trusting those pass-catching options, man. I do. I think Jonathan Taylor, and probably Warren are the only two that I really feel good about. The one thing that concerns me, I was listening to Move the Sticks today with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, and they were talking about how everyone saw last week that Rivers is obviously limited. There is a point, though, where you kind of crowd the line too much, and Rivers can just like hut and just like toss it up immediately and just hope one of his guys can run under it and try to bust off a big play there. So I have a concern that that could happen. So if you have a desperate need after facing a Puka or a JSN on Thursday and you have an Alec Pierce on your bench, it might be worth just going down swinging with that kind of a boom player anyway. So that might be the only time I'm trusting any of the other Indianapolis Colts options. But San Francisco is definitely an option defensively as well. And I was surprised when they popped up in the waiver wire rebound for us here this week. So those are the breakdowns of every game from the NFL. We're going to move on to some other subjects here on the stream today. But if you have any questions at any time, just throw them in the chat. Get your fantasy football questions in. You can also put them in the comments here. Agree, disagree, or just need any lineup help, let me know in the comments and we can all chat about it then and have a nice time about all of those things. Or you can get at me on social media at Primetime Klein.